No, I think we're actually going to use AI to replace the BS that the world has been facing, such as a huge use case, right, is real estate, where there's a lot of BS. And when we can change the way that people interact with real estate, when we can change the way people interact with markets, when we can change the way people interact with GitHub, right, you create these outcomes that are insanely exciting. And it gives you a new hope for what is possible and what the next evolution of technology looks like. I have this like vivid vision of the future where we have billboards all around the country that say, get a mortgage that you don't have to pay back. Now imagine that, right? I see unicorn opportunities that are literally just create the creation of amazing offers. And that is an amazing offering. A mortgage you don't have to pay back. Live in a house that you have exposure to on the ownership level, and you don't have to pay a mortgage on it. Young people can buy houses in America? What? Right? It changes the way that we interact with property as a whole. So to close this idea, think as big as you possibly can. Think like, I don't know if you have to go do shrooms, you got to go smoke a joint, you got to go meditate. I don't care what it is, for you to empty your mind of all the preconceived notions that may be positive, negative, or neutral about yourself, but go and empty your mind. And then think to yourself, what is the biggest impact? What is the thing that I care about the most in this world? How can I impact it? How can I change its direction for the rest of society?
Welcome to the Ventura Labs podcast. Today, we're joined by Seby of Resi, Subnet 46. He shares the subnet's pivot from real estate data collection to AI appraisals. He critiques the traditional MLS system. He envisions brokerages as tokenized platforms with Resi powering appraisals, inspections, and title verification. He discusses tokenized shared ownership enabling mortgages without repayments via appreciation and rents. And as always, thinking big and questioning assumptions. Now, back to Seby with the 80th Ventura Labs podcast.
Okay. Seby of Resi, Subnet 46. This is your second appearance on the podcast. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Grant. It's always good to be here. Thank you for having me. A lot of exciting stuff to talk about, but I'll let you captain the ship and I'll roll with it. So yeah, thanks again, man.
All right. So your Subnet 46, has been live for a few months now. Let's just start with the history of Resi Subnet.
Yeah. Wow. Bittensor is quite a nuanced place, right? You have a lot of there's a lot of problems to sort through. There's a lot of benefits to make sure that you grasp. And I think that when we first purchased the subnet, we were just so excited and eager to get to one, be part of the family of Bittensor, to be in this community. One, two, as our team had this real estate data background, we were so excited about real estate data. And as we got to speak with Const, and as we got to work with BT Labs, and as we met with more subnet owners and also customers, right? People in the real estate industry that are dying for this innovation, we've changed our path a bit. So to give the 50,000 foot view on what that looks like, we started out. And for the first 2 months, we were doing, we had the thesis of let's collect all of the data that we possibly can so that we can then use that for training models in the future, right? It was going to be always, the vision was multiple subnets. And it's like, okay, well, you can't really build out these other subnets without the right data. Let's go get that data to start. That was the wrong assumption. And thankfully, we got there quite fast. And now we're on the path to allow our miners to really drive that innovation on where the data is coming from. So right now our competition has changed to an AI appraisal competition, right? Models are submitted on Hugging Face. We verify the predictions of those appraisals, right? What a property is worth against properties that are already sold, like in the last day, right? So you can't overfit, but we also know the outcome that should be output, and we can create a highly valuable feedback loop. So Yeah, we get these AI models that come in. They're extremely good at predicting property value. And then we're able to now move to, we're doing residential. Now, then we're going to do commercial, and then we're going to do inspections. And as you see this start to happen, this allows for narrow intelligence, narrow AI models that can do an entire real estate transaction in the real world, on the on-chain world, whatever it is. And I have this new invigoration of excitement about Bittensor, about Resi, and the path that we're on. So I'm excited to share more about it. But that's really our history and where the hell we're going.
Okay. The current subnet design, as I understand it, is miners submit public models to Hugging Face, and then those models are supposed to predict the prices of specific homes. Is this a correct definition of what the subnet's doing?
Yeah. So every day we pull 500 or so properties that's sold, right? So basically, miners submit a model. There's a cutoff time, and then we go pull the data. So we can't cheat it either. Right? We can't manipulate the incentive mechanism. And then these are 500 properties that sold after the submission window, or at least have reported that on public record. We take this data and then we say, all right, let's plug 500 properties into each of these models, and we get a price for each property. And then we basically say, how close were you, AI model, to the price in an open manner, so we can basically have a great feedback loop. But when we go and sell this product to lenders or people that are iBuying or investors or these tokenization platforms, we could say, don't trust us, just verify us, right? Verify on a huge case study, essentially, like a clinical trial per se, how accurate we really are. And we're on our way.
And in this pivot from the database to the prediction, what was your thoughts on it? Why do you think this was the right choice?
Miners are so impressive, man. The miners on Bittensor are some of the smartest, I would say, people, but for the most part, you get a person who's messaging you on the Discord chat, but it's actually a group of people, right? So these are the smartest teams in the world, right? Bittensor is a magnet for the highly ambitious, highly capable builders, and on the founding side, but also builders on the machine learning and AI engineering across the board, the full stack side of things. So I think that we actually, instead of saying, "Hey, let's go scrape a ton of data," we go and tell the miners to train a model. Part of training that model, which was always our end goal, was to create these, this intellectual property, which are models that only we can productize. Part of that process is scraping data, right? So how do you kill two birds with one stone, right? You basically just skip to the second step. And, I have to give credit to Const and, show my appreciation to someone who could be doing a million different things, but, shows up for subnet teams such as Resi and says, hey, man, like, think about it in this way. If you think about it in this way, you get what you want across the board and you accelerate your roadmap by months and months and months. And, yeah, so the team that we've put together is crushing it on building out this incentive mechanism. And also, right, we just brought in a senior product engineer who is now building out and enabling the use case of our API, where lenders and tokenization platforms can actually just plug in our appraisals. Now their customers or their portfolio investors are going to know, okay, they're allocating capital in the right way. And that is just exciting to me, right? This doesn't exist today in the real estate industry. So I actually just got off of a space, and I'll stop rambling after this. But I just got off of a space about what is the actual value of AI, and it's a lot of people are thinking, oh well, we're just gonna use AI to replace people. No, I think we're actually going to use AI to replace the BS that the world has been facing, such as a huge use case, right, is real estate, where there's a lot of BS. And when we can change the way that people interact with real estate, when we can change the way people interact with markets, when we can change the way people interact with GitHub, right? You create these outcomes that are insanely exciting, and it gives you a new hope for what is possible and what the next evolution of technology looks like.
To touch on the BS, to use your wording here, the BS in real estate. One of the things that sticks out to me immediately is the MLS system for listings. Last time we spoke, you were saying the data layer is trying to replace, or I understood it as the data you're collecting is trying to replace the MLS and bring that on chain. Why pivot away from this? Why not go subnet and go 50-50 for each of these?
Well, let's start with the macro view of this idea of the MLS. Let's also narrow it down to understanding that we're talking about a tokenized MLS, right? The world and the MLS, right, went from a paper-based system. It's a book, right? And that's why you really needed a realtor to get this book and stay on top of this book and whatever. Then it went digital, right? We saw the rise of Zillow, right? Zillow is basically just reading all of the MLS source sites, APIs in the country, and then showing it in a really pretty and cute way. Then we're seeing this transformation to tokenization, right? So the third evolution of the real estate industry is really the Web3, right? The third evolution of technology, which is just a new backend. It's a new way to aggregate, organize, and verify information, right? So now instead of using like almost an Excel spreadsheet or a SQL database, you have this blockchain, right? This ledger of things. All right. So that's the macro view. To go a little bit more micro, our thesis and the thing that we believe that the world is not yet in consensus on is that brokerages, real estate brokerages, will turn into tokenization platforms. I think that it'll actually be real estate brokerages and lending companies will converge together, depending on distribution, into tokenized real estate platforms. So as that happens, we are developing this tokenized MLS. And this tokenized MLS is basically a consortium, a group of people who have tokenized platforms with trusted data, right? The trust of the data on the MLS today comes from realtors, right? Realtors plug data into the MLS. You can trust it, right? These people's careers are on the line and they're incentivized to make a sale. So they're not going to do something stupid. That's okay. But what's great is actually automating that cycle so that you don't have to pay somebody 6%, right? These platforms, they take 1% to 2%. That's great. That is traditional in terms of, decreasing the costs of, transacting in an industry. And then we take a very like 1/10 of their cost, right? Anywhere from 0.1% to 0.5% of a transaction for verifying all of the data and enabling these transactions to be completed in a scalable manner, right? If not, we're in like this like manual purgatory of tokenized transactions. So yeah, that we're still going after the tokenized MLS. Wrapping up the idea, we have this thesis that we are serving for. And if we know that these brokerages and these lenders have distribution, we're going to be able to serve them, right? We're going to be able to give them our AI models to make their lives easier and make their companies more profitable, and then fully onboard them into this tokenized future as we do things like launch our smart contract framework, which we've been in development with for some time now, and then put the full stack of our appraisal, inspection, and title verification, right? That's really all you need in a real estate transaction is inspection, appraisal, and title verification. Does somebody own the property and what is it worth? That's it. So yeah, we're going to cozy up to these lenders and realtors to better their life and better their service. And then as the world changes, we're going to help them adopt that change so they can actually still have a job, still create an amazing career, but do it in a more decentralized manner.
I'm not sure I 100% follow you, but this is what I distill that into, is you're saying these predictions that you're having the miners make with the models will will combine the inspection and appraisal parts into one, and because that would factor in the inspection in the appraisal value that it gives in the prediction.
Yeah, so let's go through that thought process. It not only allows me to share our roadmap, but let's go into it. So you have an appraisal incentive mechanism, right? What Resi is today. All that is a model competition. Now, how do you make a model competition more robust? You add an agentic layer to that competition, right? That is our next build. So what it looks like is, hey, go and create your own models or use models that are public and available through our competition. Then make an agent and submit that agent with the proper licensing so we can productize it exclusively. And now we have a system where our appraisals, as they improve, they will be able to now have agentic function, which will allow them to go deeper in the research, narrow their focus based on the input, right? Where is that property? Okay, this agent can go and find very niche specific data and increase their accuracy. So it's like, how do you make appraisals better before implementing inspections? Is that adding model plus agent competition. The next step, you just said it, was inspections. As we do inspections, then we will be able to then accelerate even more this model plus agent competition. So in the end, you have an inspection report that is AI generated and can be fed into the appraisal model. And that is actually, this is crazy. I don't know even if people will believe me, but inspections are not even used today in appraisals. Does that, I mean, like, I'm assuming like you're not a real estate first type of guy, but it just seems logical that you take this inspection, a deep understanding of the property, and then you would use that to price a property. It's not being done today. So we not only add on top of the model competition for appraisals, but then we add the inspection. And the marriage of the model, agent, and appraisal or inspection is a 99% accuracy of what a home should sell for or a commercial building. And that is true innovation. That allows for institutional underwriting of loans. That allows for people to actually start taking these tokenized properties seriously. And I mean, I have this excitement about life now that we have this clear path that nobody could thwart or damage, because now it's just a matter of time before Resi powers this industry.
So you said something there that you're like, I don't think people will believe me. I don't know if people will believe me. The inspection happens after the appraisal. So
Isn't that crazy?
the process is basically people agree on a price. Once they have an agreement, then the inspection happens. And if the inspection's bad, there may be a renegotiation after the fact. Is this the current flow for how it traditionally works?
Yeah. So let's go through that transaction process. I think it'll answer also some ancillary questions. Okay. I have a property. I'm selling it, right? You're the buyer, right? So you say, Seby, cool property. I'm going to offer you 500 grand. If you're going to do this in the traditional way, we set a closing date 90 days, 120 days in the future, and which sucks, right? That's a problem within itself. We set that closing date, and then we go through the transaction process. In the contract, it states, hey, well, you have 14 days to do this inspection. That's really stage one. Once you go to do the inspection, they come back with all these problems, and then you come to me and you're like, Seby, we got to negotiate, right? You have 30 grand worth of fixes that need to be done to this property that is like things that we need, right? You need a new heating unit. The roof is in shambles and it at least needs some repair. And you got this tree in your backyard that's destroying all of the piping, and it's creating, septic or plumbing issues in the house that we have to remove. These are, a lot of things, right? Or, that are big costs, and say it's 30 grand, right? Just throwing numbers out there. I will then have to make like a concession and say, okay, my $500,000 house for you, Grant, is $470,000. So now we proceed with an updated contract of $470,000 to purchase the property. Mind you, you're getting a mortgage. So now the appraiser comes in because you're not getting the appraisal. I mean, you don't care. The bank is getting the appraisal. And they're not saying, what is this property going to sell for? They don't care about that. They're saying, what can we liquidate this property for in the event that this person defaults, right? If you stop paying your mortgage and you get foreclosed on, what can we get rid of this liability for, this asset for? And that is what how the appraisal works today. It's a real big problem, right? Because it doesn't account for, it actually gives you the short end of the stick. How? I'll explain. If they are saying, well, we're not going after what somebody will pay for on the market, we're going after what we can liquidate the property for. We appraised this property at $450,000, and you have to pay a down payment of 20%. So mind you, you can only get a loan for $450,000. And when we clip this up, I'll make sure to put all the math so that everybody can follow. Right now, the property that you're buying for $470 qualifies for a loan of $450. Of that $450, I have to bring 20%, right? So I have to bring $90K, you have to bring $90K to the closing table, plus the 20 grand that the appraisal missed. So for you to buy this $500,000 property, you have to come out of pocket $110,000. So then you pay your mortgage. And then we do the title check. We make sure that I actually own the property. I don't have any liens. There's no issues. I don't owe any mechanics or handyman money. And then we go to the closing table, and that's it. So appraisals are not what we even think they are. They don't use the full resource pool, and structurally they're bad, right? And then it's a means to a mortgage. Mortgages are bad, right? To round this idea out, I have this like vivid vision of the future where we have billboards all around the country that say, get a mortgage that you don't have to pay back. Now imagine that, right? I see unicorn opportunities that are literally just create the creation of amazing offers. And that is an amazing offering. A mortgage you don't have to pay back. Live in a house that you have exposure to on the ownership level, and you don't have to pay a mortgage on it. Young people can buy houses in America? What? Right? It changes the way that we interact with property as a whole. So that's the full scope of a transaction, and also where it falls apart.
Mortgage you don't have to pay back. I'm gonna circle back to that one. I'm not gonna ask you immediately about that. So inherently, the best appraisals from these AI models will eventually factor in the inspections.
Yes.
Is how you view this.
Yes, eventually. Keyword, right? First model competition, then model plus agent competition. We believe that this way we can actually reach state of the art, which is 95% accuracy. This is better than Zillow. This is on par with human appraisals today. But remember, we do it instantly, right? And no one has to go there. Right? A seller or a buyer can just take a video and images, and we have it. And then adding the inspection into that appraisal model and agent is going to get us to 99% accuracy.
Okay, so this 95% number, what are you basing it off of, and how do you determine this is state of the art?
Yes, and because appraisals today are used traditional, for the most part, by mortgage companies, These are direct lenders or institutional lenders. Their risk profiles are on this premise of a 5% inaccuracy, right? They know that the property is not going to be perfectly assessed in value. And yeah, so the 5% comes from there. And our goal of 99% and not 100% is the deviation of crazy people in a crazy hot market just coming in and paying way over price in a bidding war. So I don't think anyone ever will hit 100%, but 95 is where the industry lives today. And that costs $500, right? And it takes like a week to 2 weeks. Imagine your competitive edge if you can be at 99% and you're only ever interacting with the seller, right? You don't have to send anybody out there. You don't have to send any inspector out there. You don't have to do anything. It's just it enables a peer-to-peer exchange of real estate, or a lender to peer to peer, which some people just can't get around.
And this accuracy is on the amount that banks and lenders are willing to give you for a specific property.
Well, that's how it's used today. What we're going for is the on-market value of the property, right? This isn't the liquidatable value, right? The $450,000 from $470,000 example. But it is rather, if we sold it on market through an agent, what could we get for this property? That is a more accurate proxy of value, because especially when you tokenize a property and say there is an exit event, you're not selling in a distressed manner, right? You're selling it for the highest possible value, the optimal value on the market. And that is why we're taking the direction we're taking, right? Because that's our use case.
Okay. Now, how are mortgages not going to be paid back? How are these billboards going to say a mortgage you don't have to pay back?
Short answer with Resi. That's the innovation of Resi right there. But let's talk about how that happens. This is probably the element I'm most excited for. So I'm going to talk about two things: how it's possible, and then how we're going to even build upon that inevitable future. First, how is it possible? In real estate, it's worth noting that you can actually, there's only a few ways to make money in real estate: appreciation, rent, and interest. Right? You can sell the service of shelter or the product of shelter, and you get rent. You can lend somebody money so that they can have the experience of shelter, and you get interest, right? This is a mortgage. And then you also have the fact that you can buy a house, and so you buy it outright, and it appreciates in value. Right now, we live in a world where you go to a bank and they're making money on interest, and the owner is making money on appreciation. That's how people in the USA, especially my family, is part of this. As I have an uncle who's a real estate developer. This is how they created wealth, right? You buy a property with a mortgage. The mortgage interest rate is less than the appreciation of the property, and then that's the arbitrage that you are taking on, right? And especially if you add rents on top of that, you now have appreciation plus income that pays off your mortgage. And oh my God, is that a wealth creation engine? How we are enabling this is, if you can tokenize a property, you can have access to liquidity, right? People want a piece of this asset, and you can actually have joint partners, right? These are like it's like doing a house as a joint venture. And there's a managing director, the person who lives there, and then there are shareholders, right? It's like a solo venture that has a bunch of angel investors. That's how we see properties in the future. And you can buy those tokens back, right? As people sell them, you can make contracts that say, hey, well, this wallet can actually have the option to buy these tokens at this price on a schedule, right? Say, for example, If I get into a house and then I get a big bonus, I can buy those tokens back even if they're not available. A lot of edge cases that allow you to put more money into your house, but you create an environment where you pay a down payment, the taxes, the utilities, and now you live in a house for the highest capital efficiency that the world has ever experienced. And that is a breakthrough. When you could change the way that people can access property and access the appreciation of property, holy cow. It is pivotal for the economy, in my opinion, and the basically simulations that we've run. Let's add to this, Grant. If we have a platform of people and you have a bunch of tokens that are on an illiquid market, there's no liquidity pool. That would be very capital inefficient, right? To have a liquidity pool for every property. How do you access liquidity in this situation? How do you access leverage, right? How do you emulate the way that capital markets interface with property? The answer is you create a pool of capital. This is really where Resi starts to explode in value. Ready for this? If we pool together, say $100 million in USDC, USDT, right? This goes back, I think we talked about it in the past, Resi Finance. USDT and USDC in a pool. And we, as Resi, have the smart contract standard and the Oracle. So we know the value of a property, and this is auto updating all the time. We're able to say, hey, well, if you're using our smart contracts and those smart contracts are validated by our AI models and agents, you can borrow against this pool. Or sorry, you can access liquidity and borrow against your real estate token from this pool of liquidity. There you can do fixed rate loans. There you can do variable rate loans depending on the pool. But now, if I have $100,000, I can access $50,000. From that $50,000, I can now access $25,000. From that 25, I could do 12. From that 12, I could do 6. And I can loop this up with the understanding that property is not going to collapse by 50% in value. And my 100,000 in exposure turns into $200,000 in exposure. Holy cow. I'm not going to get liquidated. I've doubled my portfolio allocation. And whether it's the rent or whether it's my active income can basically pay that loan. That's insane. That is where I think that we not only change the world, but we give people and like the institutional side of things, we get them involved because everybody wants exposure to real estate, and if liquidated, they get real estate exposure, right? So it's like a bank today. I'm going to give you money. I'm going to give you USDC, and if you default, I'm going to take your property. Same thing that they're used to. Appraisal, inspection, title verification, same thing they're used to. Now it's just happening on this third database, which is crypto, blockchain. And man, I don't know if you could tell, but I'm amped up about the direction that we're in every day, because I've always wanted, my LinkedIn has always said this: I want to create technology that enhances the human experience. It is Resi in a nutshell.
Okay, so this tokenized shared ownership of assets is the way to have mortgages you don't pay back. Do you view these shareholders similar to, an example is opening a leveraged loan on crypto, how they pay a funding rate to keep the exposure to that asset? Is that how the mortgage still gets paid back by these shareholders with the equivalent of a funding rate?
When you're borrowing against the property asset, yes. In the example I just explained, where you're accessing liquidity from this pool of capital, yes, 100%. The funding rate is basically just the interest rate on capital, right? So if there can be fixed rate or there could be variable rate in this pooled Resi Finance future. The other side of it goes back to what I said before, which was you can make money in 3 ways. One of those ways is appreciation. So now you have this decentralized group of investors, whether they're family offices, high net worth individuals, or low, middle, high class income earners. And instead of them making interest on these property tokens that they own, they can, in the worst case, in the minimum case, make appreciation, so that when that property is revalued through our Oracle and the price increases, boom, they can make money there on the auction, kind of like how NFTs are sold, right? There's like an auction. Hey, I would put a price on my assets and what I'm willing to sell it for. But if you look at these tokenization platforms, we actually just partnered with Honey Shares, and they have tokenized a ton of Airbnb properties, right? We're also doing the same type of thing with estateprotocol.com, right? This is on Arbitrum. And most of the tokenization happening today is with Airbnb, and that provides a yield. So not only do you get appreciation of these assets, this property token, but you also get the rental yield. So what's the ideal financial strategy here? Let me go and these yields are like 10 to 20%, right? So keep that in mind. The ideal financial strategy in this on these platforms, and why I'm so excited to just get this out the door, is I'm going to buy a ton of these Airbnb rental tokens. Then I'm going to borrow against them to get, say, 2x exposure. And then with that rental income, I'm just going to pay the interest rate and increase my size and keep doing that. And you can actually do this on a programmable level at a 50% loan to value, meaning the price would have to drop 50% before I get liquidated, which has never happened in the history of real estate, right? Even in 2008, prices dropped like 30%, and that was like, oh my God, the world's ending. So, yeah, it's insane. It's insane. Somebody gets access to housing, investors get access to liquidity, and in the ideal case of commercial and Airbnb type properties, or just rental properties for that matter, you have these insane financial strategies that can create wealth on their own.
Is this not just bringing REITs on chain?
No. So a REIT is basically just like a consortium of a bunch of properties that a centralized entity invests in. So they go and they find these deals. There are some similarities. You get exposure to real estate. You're doing it in the easy way, right? Because you just buy a REIT token, and then they're taking that capital, and then they're buying property, and it's almost like a DAT, right? It's like a rat, a REIT. It's a real estate asset treasury. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities, but in the end, we're actually giving more power to the people to decide what they want to invest in, and then we're also giving the power to buyers and sellers to access liquidity for their property. Think about it as a seller of a commercial property. Okay, maybe I have a loan on this deal, but what if I want to access additional liquidity so we can do another deal, right? An opportunity comes up. Well, I can basically sell a part of my deal that I have today. People can buy that, say 10% of the value. Now I take that 10% of the value and I go buy another deal, right? So this can either be the entire financing stack for a deal, a property, or it can be just a piece of the financing stack of a property. So accessibility and composability are ways that real estate has not, or luxuries real estate has not had access to. And I'm excited to give that to the world.
This idea of tokenized asset ownership with the managing partner taking the physical usage of the thing, how does this scale to other things, say a car or other assets?
Yeah. Well, if you let's focus on the question that you're asking before I go into like how our tech actually applies to that too. A car is a depreciating asset. Right. There's a couple ways that this actually works with vehicles. I actually kind of want to do this myself. I'm a bit frugal when it comes to personal spending. Um, but there are groups, and you see this all the time in Miami, that will go and buy a Lamborghini, right? And then they'll split it up. They'll buy like 10 supercars, and then they'll split it up against 250 people and sell a membership to access those cars. Right. So any day of the week, you go and you pick a car out or whatever, and you can do it a certain time, certain amount of times per month. Same with private airplanes, right? You can have a jet that you co-own with a ton of people, where you pay for a seat or you pay for the whole thing, but in a fractionalized way. How do you how do you uh, how do you do that without tokenization? Uh, it's really hard, right? It's a lot of coordination. Just on organizing everything. So that is how it applies to, say, logistics or transportation. Because when you ask about cars, you're also asking about planes. Then, how does our technology apply to this? There is a possible future. I've bought the domain, funny enough, inspect.network. And there's a future where Resi is just part of inspect.network. And we also create technology, if we've cracked the code on a feedback loop of assessing value, where we can inspect jets and we can inspect cars. And this allows people to create Carvana competitors, or this allows Carvana to do amazing things, or this allows anybody to access a loan for a car, knowing that, because you have to know the underlying value of the thing you're getting a loan for. I don't think that you want to fractionalize a Toyota Camry, because it's like, I'm going to buy this asset that somebody else is going to drive and it's going to go down in value. Real estate's quite peculiar against cars and airplanes, that you can have somebody live in it. Whether or not they improve it, the price will still go up, right? Because they're not making enough houses for the amount of people that they're letting into the nation, or the wealth that is being printed into the circulation. So yeah, it's real cool. I mean, this applies to anything where there's gold, right? We don't know if we have gold in our big safes. Okay, well, let's go inspect it, right, on inspect.network. So I have that future case. You're kind of pulling cards out of my pocket for me, but I'm glad you asked that question.
Inherently, though, the best appraisal would in theory use an inspection as input data. So would it not be the same thing as not creating that database, because inherently these appraisal models will already factor in an inspection?
You said factor in a database?
Okay. So initially you guys were making the database like an MLS, where it's like you're just aggregating a bunch of data to train a model, right? Inherently, the best model would take an inspection as input data. So I guess what I'm saying is the inspection step necessary, or have you already solved that by creating the appraisal prediction?
Okay, I see what you're saying now. My apologies. Yeah. An appraisal is an assessment of market context and property specific condition. Let's make it work for a car. Toyota Camrys sell for a range of $10,000, say $15,000, depending on the year, the trim, the mileage. But then they're also really determined by, is it a rotted frame? Does it actually run? Question mark. Is it a good car? Right? Does it need new tires? Things like that, right? So you get macro understanding of value based on market context, but then you get micro 1% accuracy type of context through inspection. So whether it applies to a car, or whether it applies to an airplane, or whether it applies to a house, it is very important. So you need both. in the case of what I discussed before about us skipping the step of data, it doesn't mean that the data we intended to collect in real estate is not actually going to be in these models that we're using. They essentially need that data to pre-train the models. So that's like the killing the two birds with one stone analogy I used. How do you get your data in a model? Well, you ask somebody to make the model and they need to go get the data. And that was the approach we took. And I would honestly say they're equally as important, right? How can you price a property you know the condition of, but you don't know the market of? How can you price a property where you know the market? You can get a wide range when you don't know the condition. So you need both to really excel and enable accuracy as an oracle.
Yeah, I guess the point I was trying to make there was just, I think you've already inherently solved this the same way you already inherently solved the data problem, because it's a factor into these models they create.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so end goal. What is the end game of Resi here? Where does this all lead to?
Okay, this will be where I put up another graphic once it's clipped up. But the end goal is 3 models and 3 products. Okay. When I say models, I mean model plus agent. So we have appraisal, inspection, and title, right? Does the person own it? How valuable is it? And okay, with inspection plus appraisal, we really know how valuable it is. That's the intelligence pipeline for Resi. The cool thing about this, and I think a lot of people in the detail community miss it because I am the most guilty of selling a massive vision that is, 2 years, a year down the line. But what is immediate for us is that we have direct lenders, right? People who don't get government funding and need to do appraisals in a certain way. People who raise capital privately and then fund mortgages and things like that. iBuyers, investors, they kind of fall in the same boat. REITs and hedge funds, they need to value property. Breathing down my neck to say, hey, I want to use this tech. Or when I explain to them that it's competitive and I explain to them the essence of Bittensor, they're like, wow, I want access to this innovation. It's going to give me an edge, right? Everyone's fighting for an edge. So that is the intelligence. That intelligence then is compounded not just by the revenue we can generate in Web 2, but in Web 3, we compound it with our 3 other elements, which is an oracle that powers smart contracts, and the oracle and the smart contract, right, as I mentioned before, powers access to the liquidity pool. So we become a full stack of intelligence, infrastructure, and financial services. And that is how I know for a fact when I go to sleep at night, if Bittensor goes to the Tau goes to $100, or it goes to $1,000, it doesn't matter to me because we will never stop building into the direction that nearly forces us to become a multi-billion-dollar organization, right? With just the top 3 and not even touching on chain, we can transform the real world of real estate. Then our goal with this other tech is to allow them to transform and adapt to the new database of blockchain. So, call me a moon boy all you want, but we do have this entire full stack and 2-sided potential that is actually coming to life as of like the next few weeks of real world companies starting to adopt our API.
This second part, the Oracle smart contract liquidity pool aspect. The Oracle, I'm assuming, is your predictions. The smart contract piece, where does this come in? What does this do?
Yeah, so everything in life should be one click. That is my assumption. So
that's a good clip right there. Everything in life should be one click.
$1 million, one click. Yeah, but I wish. The reason I say that is because as I go to these tokenization platforms, they all have the same problem. 1, they have no oracle, right? 2, every property needs to get inspected, appraised, title verification. They're doing it manually, which means it costs anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 to make all that happen, right? And then closing costs through a traditional title company, another 1 to 2% on top of everything. So these are the problems they have. They also have the problem that they need to develop smart contracts. Each and every one of them has to develop their own smart contracts, and then each and every one of them has to audit. So they have to bring their own Oracle. They have to bring their own smart contracts. They have to bring their own audits for those smart contracts. And then they have to go run the business. Imagine if like becoming a realtor was not only do you have to make not only do you have to pass a test, but then you have to go build the house and then sell it. Like that was the only way to make money as a realtor. Was like you have to go literally build a house, and then right, building out this infrastructure is essentially the cost of building a house, and then that allows you to make percentages of sales. Doesn't make sense. So when we pitch to them, hey, well, we're actually building out these smart contracts. This is the exact architecture. We have it. We're going to announce in very nice and simple to understand graphics, infographics. When we tell them, hey, we have those smart contracts. Oh, we're also working with Sherlock to audit all of it. We'll probably try BitSec as well, right? We want to see what they have going on at Subnet 60. And then we have compliance built in as we are working with Halborn as well. So cool. We have the Oracle. We have the smart contracts. We have all the validation for the smart contract. Go and get customers. Go get investors and go get sellers. That's it. That's what we want these tokenization platforms to do. As we launch with existing platforms, we're then going to start knocking on the doors of brokerages and lending companies and saying, hey, you want to know who's eating your lunch? These guys. Do you want to actually do this? And it's not an exclusive thing, right? You can put a property on the market traditionally, and you can put it on this tokenized platform, and you can put a window and say, hey, well, if you sell the property, we're just going to escrow all the money. And if you decide to take it off the market, we'll actually just give you this money, right? So you can access, your customer can access liquidity, the customer being a seller, and the platform just focuses on making those deals happen instead of becoming a tokenization blockchain development company. It's insane. So when we tell them this, they are ecstatic. They're like, you're telling me I'm going to cut my roadmap by a year? I'm going to cut my costs by 200 grand? Sign me up. Oh, and we only pay you when we make money? Whoa. That is why we're going after this, and that's how it's structured.
So it sounds like you want to be the infrastructure to tokenize these houses.
Yeah, because think about it. If we are the Oracle and the smart contract, and they're actually working together, because there's things like, well, if you own 50% of a house, the rest is on a mortgage. We're not going to allow you to sell those tokens and access that liquidity. We're going to have an escrow service where the platform has to pay off that mortgage with a multi-sig. And there are a lot of edge cases like that we're building for as well, to protect investors. But if we do all of this Oracle, or when we do all this Oracle smart contract and liquidity build out, what stops us from showing all of the properties that are on chain across every single platform? And that, if I'm not mistaken, and the graphic I'll pop up on the screen in the clips, is a tokenized MLS. It is a multiple listing source. The multiple sources of listings are these tokenization platforms on a standard. And now anybody can go to our source, and then we just route the payment through that platform. The platform makes its fees. The investors access liquidity. The investors also know they're getting something of value. And everybody, it's a win-win-win-win-win. And I'm excited. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but some nights I can't even sleep because I'm talking to AI all night about, okay, let's go through this flow. Let's talk about how this can be marketed, how it can be packaged. And I'm glad you've given me a space here to share that excitement and share that vision.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is the timeline, and what do you see the biggest roadblockers are in inhibiting the delivery of all of this and making it reality?
Yeah. So, my goal is that by the end of the year, we have the inspect or appraisal, residential and commercial done. We have inspections done. We have our smart contracts completed, and we have a group of nodes, a decentralized Oracle network, a group of nodes that hosts these models. And then we take the outputs like Chainlink does, right? Chainlink has a decentralized Oracle network. It's called Dawn. And then in 2027, we could start, as we start seeing transactions and we start proving the idea in its full scale. All the while, we've been generating massive amounts of revenue from lenders, investors, and these tokenization platforms. Then we could start raising capital for the liquidity pool, right? Real estate backed loans, where if somebody gets liquidated, you just get the real estate token, and you could sell it if you want. But that's what you get in turn for accepting it as collateral. But you know that the value is secure. So start of 2027 should be when we start, or have already started briefly, raising capital for this massive liquidity pool. But we will also have an Oracle and smart contracts and this platform for people to see all of the listings across blockchain.
Okay, Seby, I got one last question for you here today. And that is, since you have this grand vision for what Resi will become, and you're able to extrapolate the path to get there, what advice do you have for other subnet owners in terms of thinking big and thinking for that ideal outcome?
Yeah. The best way to create massive value is to change the way things are done and question assumptions. If you're essentially taking a real world structure or service or product and just saying plus AI, who cares, right? Who cares, right? Chances are it doesn't even need AI, right? If that's the level of thinking you're willing to put into this, right? The world's not just going to pass 10, 100, $1 billion to you. How you have to think is, what is the biggest thing that I can go after? That's one. Me, I have this vision of transforming the way humans interact with property, right? I think it was Sony. I think the company was Sony, or a company like them. And the mission was not, we're going to make great electronics. Their mission was, we're going to make Japan known for high quality products. That was their company mission, right? So our mission is to change the way people interact with property, right? Then you work backwards from that. Okay. So when you work backwards from that, the goal is now to make a consortium, a collection of product market fit services and or products and services that have product market fit. So for us, we have this tokenized MLS vision that changes everything for property. But let's work back from there. We then have liquidity pool. Then we have smart contracts interacting with an Oracle. Before that, we have title verification, inspections, appraisals. These are all things that already have product market fit and demand in the real world. And we can make millions of dollars on each of them. And then putting them together, we can make billions of dollars on a yearly basis. So to close this idea, think as big as you possibly can. Think like, I don't know if you have to go do shrooms, you got to go smoke a joint, you got to go meditate. I don't care what it is, for you to empty your mind of all the preconceived notions that may be positive, negative, or neutral about yourself, but go and empty your mind and then think to yourself, what is the biggest impact? What is the thing that I care about the most in this world? How can I impact it? How can I change its direction for the rest of society? Elon Musk is trying to make us multi-planetary. Give the guy $1 trillion. Right? Who cares? That's peanuts in the multi-planetary race. And that's why this guy shoots for Mars and hits the moon, or shoots for the stars and hits Mars. that idea or what the real saying is shoot for the stars, aim for the moon. Do that. And the way that you do that is big vision with steps that actually have feasibility and product market fit so that you can actually sell a vision and profit along the way.
Seby, always a pleasure having you on the podcast, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you, everybody watching. The one call to action I do have is stake Resi, stake to the owner validator to support the team. And thank you for watching again. Grant, it is always a pleasure talking to you, man.